I'm Darren Morton.
I'm Simon Matthews. This is Lift,
The Lifestyle Medicine podcast where we dive into the science of health and wellbeing.
Good day, Dr. Morton. Professor Morton.
Good day, almost Dr. Simon. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm doing very well.
We have been chatting, and I don't say that with any jest, because we have been talking offline, and we don't want to preempt anything, but it's getting pretty close, isn't it? A submission of a certain PhD.
It is getting pretty close. It is getting pretty close. It feels it's starting to feel imminent right now. Yeah. I'm hoping that in the not too distant future, I'll be able to stop having to say, I'm not a doctor, which I've spent the last at least 15 years of my life saying in lifestyle medicine contexts. So,
yeah.
I remember, anyhow, there we go.
I remember leading up to my PhD, and I remember thinking, wow, imagine being called doctor, and it was exciting for about 2 days, a red hot minute. And then I forgot all about it. You've got that interesting thing to decide when you book your flights. Do you put doctor in front of your name?
Doctor?
At the risk of being called up in the case of emergency.
Yeah. Or when you apply for a new Platinum American Express card, do you call yourself doctor? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it does give rise, of course, to a new life goal, because of what I'm now discovering, of course, having worked in lifestyle medicine for some time, is that you and I both have a number of professional colleagues, who were first physicians and then also undertook research PhDs. So they are, in fact, double doctors. Yeah,
they are the real doctors, and I'll let you decide which one qualifies as a real doctor.
Well, I'm starting to get FOMO already. I haven't yet got my first one, but I feel like maybe I should go back to school and study to become a physician so I can be a doctor.
I'm sure that there's some medication you can take to cure that urge.
Well, so I want to tell you about an experience I had recently, which started out, as a lot of these things do, simply as a reflection and an observation, and then it turned into a sort of deeper curiosity about some things that we often talk about, and things that I think are central to lifestyle medicine. So we've talked before about I'm not someone who has any great capacity at running, but I do enjoy running, and I enjoy particularly running in community events, community runs. So things like I used to enjoy parkrun. Sadly, there is no parkrun in Spain at the moment, but I used to enjoy parkrun, and I also enjoy. I've run the City to Surf in Sydney. Where I used to live, north of Sydney, I ran the Bay to Bay several times, which is a 12K race. You've probably done that one yourself. And here in Madrid, on New Year's Eve each year that I've been here, I've run the famous San Vallecano run, which is a 60-year-old 10K race on New Year's Eve. And there's various other 10K and other road races in Madrid, which are dotted through the year. They've actually pretty much wrapped up for the year now, because we're heading into summer, so it's just too hot to do that sort of thing. But and they'll start again in about September. But just recently, I ran a 10K in Madrid. And I've got to say, one of the things I really like about running those sorts of community races in Madrid, I don't know whether you know this, but Madrid itself the city of Madrid is on a kind of a central plateau in Spain. So if you look at if you were to take a plan view of the country of Spain, you would see that it starts obviously at sea level on the east and western, north and south coasts. There's a land bridge to southern France, of course, but on those coastal areas it starts at sea level, and then as you move towards the centre of the country, it rises up to a plateau that's about 600 to 700 metres, or a couple thousand feet. Madrid sits on that plateau, and I think actually that the technical, I don't know, like geological name is something like Badlands. I think that's literally what it's. I think it's known as Badlands. Anyhow, Madrid sits here, and Madrid itself, is a slightly hilly city. It's not entirely flat, so you're already elevated, and there's even changes in elevation within that. The more southern part of the city, or the more southern part of the sort of central part of the city, which is where I live, tends to drop down just a little bit in altitude, whereas slightly north of the centre tends to rise a bit in altitude. And all the road races start just slightly north of the centre, and they end just slightly south of the centre. So what that means is, I like it too, because across across the 10K race, you're pretty much always running downhill. There's a few little parts where you go uphill a little bit, but essentially you're running just slightly downhill the whole way. And the change in elevation, across 10Ks is only, it's probably only maybe 250 feet. It's certainly not going to be more than 100 metres change in elevation, but it makes a difference. And it feels like it makes a difference as you're running. So sometimes when I'm running these races, I sort of experience a moment of thankfulness that they don't run them in the other direction, starting which would feel horrendously difficult. So I really enjoy these races, and I did one just recently at the end of May. It was a 10K race. So I'm going to say here, my wife did this race as well, and for reasons not related to what I'm going to share with you, she's the true hero of this story, because about a week before this, she started feeling, very tired, a little bit unwell. Slept for a long period of time one afternoon, like hours and hours and hours and hours. Woke up the next morning and noticed this rash, and fairly quickly realised that she had shingles. And for those listeners who may not know, shingles is like chicken pox for big people. So kids tend to get chicken pox. There is a chicken pox vaccine now, I think, which when you and I were kids didn't exist. So you probably had chicken pox as a kid. I'm pretty sure I had chicken pox as a kid. So that means, of course, that you are also vulnerable to shingles. You what?
I've had shingles. Yeah.
Oh, you've had it already.
Yeah.
Wow. So you must be old even though you're young, because you've already had it. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you'll appreciate this then. You'll appreciate that it's not pleasant. So you get this, it's viral for a start. So you get all those sort of viral symptoms. You get this rash. You get intense nerve pain associated with it wherever the site of the rash is, which is typically arm and chest and back and so on. Really intense nerve pain. And because it's viral, essentially there is now a preventative vaccine that you can take, but essentially there's no treatment other than managing the symptoms and letting it pass. Notwithstanding that, 1 week after the onset of shingles, she completed a 10K road race.
Mm.
In the midst of still managing this, which is, it's testament to lots of things, I guess, determination and a bit of grit and so on, but also testament, I think, to the principles of lifestyle medicine, which meant that her experience of it, while painful and uncomfortable, really was on the shorter end of the experience. That even, a month or 5 weeks later, she still has some residual symptoms, and you probably experience this as well. You get, long-lasting kind of residual itchiness and discomfort, and sometimes it can go on for months and months and months.
That's correct. Yeah.
So fortunately, she appears to be having one of the briefer experiences of it. But notwithstanding all that, she did get out 1 week after diagnosis, in the midst of experiencing this, and ran a 10K race. So that was that's a notable event in and of itself. But here's the thing that I just happened to, the reflection I took away at the end of the race. This was one of the first races where I didn't wear earbuds. I often listen to music when I'm running or a podcast or something, because I do get all this kind of mental chatter about, are you starting to feel tired yet? Are you sure you can do this, etc., etc. So I just tend to block it with music or something like that. For whatever reason, this time it wasn't a conscious decision, but I just didn't take those with me. Didn't run with them. And as a consequence, I was much more attuned to the immediate sounds around me. And one of those sounds that was consistent all the way through was the sounds of non-runners standing on the side of the road, cheering and encouraging people. And some of them were encouraging. Some of them had particular signs. Go Pedro, or Louisa.
They called Pedro.
So some of them were encouraging particular friends or family members, and every so often you'd see little kids jump up and down and get excited as their parent came past. But there were a large number of people who were simply there, being encouraging of everyone, cheering everyone. Didn't matter who you were. And every time, I became aware of that. Every time, you'd hear someone, clapping or whistling or cheering. Two things happened. First of all, I often had a moment of connectedness to that person, because often, you get attracted by a sound like that. You look up, and sometimes you even make eye contact with that person as you're running past, and that eye contact turns into a shared smile or something like that. So you have this kind of micro moment of social connection with a complete stranger, someone that you probably never get to see again in the rest of your life. And what I observed was, cumulatively, across a 10K race, which got increasingly hot through the morning. So by the time, I think the temperature when we started was 21. By the time we finished, it was about 28 degrees. It's a reasonably warm temperature to be running in. So the temperature rose quickly that particular day. What I noticed by the end was I felt pretty sort of, I felt energized. I wouldn't necessarily say I was ready to get out and run another 10K, although I did see some people, obviously the elite runners, who had finished the race and then were running back in the opposite direction. They couldn't be bothered with the clothing drop at the end.
Yeah. That's about, as you're describing this, a couple of things that come to mind I'd like to share. Number one, I do know something about the effect of encouragement on performance, because when I was a master's student way back, I had a friend who was actually doing a research project that I didn't know the details of. It was a little bit secret, but I was invited to be a participant for his study. And what we had to do was a VO2 max test. So I don't know if you've ever done a VO2 max test, but essentially they get you on a treadmill and run you to exhaustion. So there are different protocols for it, but typically every minute or two, they just dial up the intensity until you can't go anymore. And you've got like a mouthpiece in, it's collecting your the air you're expiring and all the rest of it. Anyway, you had to do it on two occasions, 1 week apart. And once again, you weren't privy to what the intent of this study was.
So you were blinded to the study.
But I remember thinking it's odd. Something's odd here. And it didn't click what was odd about it. But the first time I went in there and I had some people, there was a group of other people they brought in whilst they're doing the test. And so the lead researcher is sitting there with a clipboard, ticking off things. And there I am just concentrating on trying to keep up as the speed dialed up. But then they had about 3 or 4 other people there. And the whole time they're like, "Go, Darren, you can do it." And particularly if it started to get hard, they're like, "Go, go, go." You're like, and then you go till exhaustion and then you finish. And then came back the next week and same scenario, exact same format. And they still had some people standing there, but they didn't say a word. It was just like,
they were just like staring at you.
It's just staring at me. And the guy with the clipboard was like, "Okay, about to dial the intensity up again." Silence. And I'm like, doing the exact same thing. And so it turned out, as I learned later, the effect or the interest of the study was that verbal cheering, that support that you can get from people. Does it affect you?
I'm really hoping you're going to say it made a difference.
Okay, so do you want to know what the results were?
I do want to know the answer. Yeah, because this is kind of directly connected to what I'm going to be talking about.
Yeah. So for me, made no difference. And
Really?
they found for some subjects it didn't make any difference, and for others it made a big difference.
So this is good to know. So I'm not going to waste my time encouraging you anymore now.
That's right. That's it. No free ride. They just look, to be honest. And when I reflect on that, they were the results. But what I also know,
there's probably an intersection with personality, right?
I think there's an intersection.
Some people confronted with that task are just determined that they are going to prove something to themselves, and
that's right.
Because you're Mr. I don't bolt my wings on till I'm already in the air when you go flying.
Well, I think particularly at that time, I was doing a lot of athletic stuff and I knew what my VO2 max was. And so for me, it was almost like a determined, what I want to get that again. And you don't know the results till the end, although you could sort of gauge an idea as to how you were going. So I think to be honest, my intrinsic motivation was very high at that period of time. And it was a bit more clinical for me. It was just like, it's get it done. I think probably now it would be maybe a bit different because I tell you, I'm a big believer that we all need a cheer squad.
Lift is supported by the Lift Project, an educational adventure where you learn science-based ways to lift your mood and your life. The Lift Project is lifting lives around the globe, in healthcare settings, workplaces, schools, universities and communities. To find out more, visit theliftproject.global.
I even use because I run, a fitness class here at the university, and I see this happen. I see people, they're doing activities, and then particularly if I'm there and they're coming, I'll see them like around the oval running, and then they're almost like clutching their chest, like, and then you see them come past, and it's like, yeah, you're looking good, you're feeling, you're strong, look, great technique. The chest comes up, boop, 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 they go again. So, there's no doubt that having that cheer squad, having that encouragement makes a massive difference. I was intrigued by that particular study. Hey, one other.
Go on.
Little anecdote that I'll add here. You talked about the encouragement of complete strangers. I had a friend who did a full marathon. He went in unprepared for this marathon, and he at about 35 kilometres, that's probably 20-ish miles. He hits the wall, right? So he's depleted his glycogen stores. The wheels have gone real wobbly now and starting. Anyway, he said, and he's quite a mild-mannered kind of person. He's a really likable guy. Anyway, he said that he saw up ahead there was a kid young person holding a plate with sweets on it. And obviously, because when your glycogen levels deplete that low and your brain's crying out for glucose, he said all he could fixate was on these sweets. Anyway, he said that his eyes just lit up, and he said all he could think about, and he said, I was going, and then just as I arrived at the plate, the person in front of me grabbed the last couple, and there I was left with this young person holding this empty plate, looking at me, and he said, and I just lost it. He said, and I'm like, why would you do that to someone? Why didn't you save me some? Like this true story. And he said the poor kid's like, oh, look, he is just trying to encourage strangers. And he said, I felt so terrible after it. He said it was my brain just wasn't working. He said I wasn't in a good place at all. But encouragement. We all need it.
So you just shared that you run a fitness class at the university, and now I've got this mental image of you wearing short shorts, a singlet top, a sweatband around your forehead, sweatbands on each wrist with a whistle in your mouth.
Our listeners aren't going to be not able to not think that now. So I just want to reiterate here that the shorts aren't that short. Just if that's helpful for reframing.
The other observation I would have is, in terms of what you told me about your particular results with your friend's master's study, it occurs to me that your friend set out with this dream of demonstrating how important the role of encouragement was in performance. And you promptly ruined it for him by.
I was like the study. Probably, he left his academic career because I ruined it. Sorry, go.
No, go on.
I've got one other short little story which speaks to this very much. I have one of my best mates. He was a cyclist. He used to do a lot of cycling when they were when he was younger. And they got some group cycling. There was a bit of a team of them, and they got some, team cycling gear. It was sponsored by a local business, and anyway, but they went for a ride one Sunday morning down to Sydney, and as they're riding along, there was a parade that was going to be on that particular day, and they somehow, this was well before the parade, they got corralled down the road that the parade was going to be on. And he said, and pretty soon they realised that, hey, wait a sec, what's happening here? We're riding the course that this parade's going to be on. There were barricades down the side of the road, and he said literally thousands of people were waiting for this parade to come. And he said all of us, just these absolute novice, riders, but looked the part because we had our official team tops on. And he said the crowd just went wild because they thought it was the beginning of the parade. And he said they were cheering and there's clapping. And he said we felt like rock stars. He said, and so
this is really interesting, and it kind of strengthens the reflection that I took away from this race. So we're talking about encouragement, but encouragement also in this context has a very specific mechanism, and that mechanism is actually a type of social connection. And I am of the view that if you were to simply have signs along the side of the road saying, go for it, you're doing great, not far to go, that doesn't have the same effect as a human being actually standing there. So my experience in running this race was these multiple moments of micro connection through the race, and also feeling the sort of the boost from that as a result. So it really got me thinking after that about it got me thinking about particular combinations in lifestyle medicine. Now, one of the things I really love about lifestyle medicine and the idea of the pillars or slices of the pie, or whatever way you want to think about them, is that they work together. So we're really aiming to address all of these things, not just a single one of them. And the other nice perspective about lifestyle medicine, I think, is that in many ways, if you have the framework clear, where you start doesn't matter. So you can start with diet and then ultimately see changes to your exercise, your sleep, and so on, or you can start with sleep, or you can start with exercise, or whatever it might be. So that's one of the nice principles about lifestyle medicine. Nevertheless, it did get me thinking about whether there are specific combinations of pillars in lifestyle medicine that are particularly useful. And the idea here perhaps is a little analogous to the idea in pharmacology of adjuvant therapies, which I'm sure you're familiar with, the idea that this is the main treatment, whatever this is, and as an adjuvant or helping therapy, this thing also makes some sort of difference. But the adjuvant part is important because the adjuvant itself is not going to do the heavy lifting. You do need that main component, and this component boosts it rather than them being completely interchangeable. So it got me thinking about the idea of social connection as an adjuvant to exercise in particular, to what extent that boosts the outcomes of doing that. And if we couple this with your account of your friend's study, if those social connections mean that I'm going to push a bit harder or perform a bit higher, then arguably I'm getting an increased benefit from that that I might not otherwise if that were absent. But not everything works that way. So, for example, if you've ever tried to run really hard while you're eating a bowl of otherwise very healthy beans, lentils, and salad, that doesn't work so well.
No.
So it got me thinking about what sorts of pairs might work well. And I've got a couple of ideas here, but I'm interested in your thoughts about, just intuitively, what sorts of pairings of activities in lifestyle medicine might be good partners.
That's a great question. I'm sort of running through potential combinations, and I think of sleep and food. And there's physiological reasons for that. When you start when you sleep deprived, ghrelin levels change. That sort of changes your feeding behaviour. There's definitely. But then I think of sleep. Sleep seems to be a bit of a blanket for all. Like I know that when I'm tired, it's a lot harder to exercise. I tend not to. And then, it's interesting at the moment. I'm preparing for my son's wedding next week. We were chatting about this, and it's just chaos. There's so much going on at the moment. And I've been trying really hard to carve out time to do my activity during the day. And there's been a couple of days when I've missed it, and I haven't slept well at all. I lie down in bed, and even though I'm tired, I'm like, I just can't sleep, and it's because I haven't built up enough adenosine to trigger that. So you know what? I'd have to give it more thought in terms of if I think there are particular ones.
Even based on what you're sharing, we could perhaps form an hypothesis that exercise is an adjuvant for sleep. It's possible to sleep without exercise, of course.
Yes,
but perhaps the presence of exercise improves the experience of
definitely does. That's
sleep.
It's very
and even perhaps even light exercise. So again, this is an N of one and essentially meaningless at a population level. But the last few days, as you would know, I've had this PhD supervisor, on my back for 2.5 years now about getting this piece of work done. The last 3 days, I essentially spent editing a major draft of my dissertation, which meant, long periods of time sitting exactly where I am right now, looking at a computer screen. And, I broke it up by getting up and, moving around. But essentially I was spending pretty much all of the day here. Yesterday, by contrast, I finished, I did the final edits early in the morning. I'd finished by about 7:30 in the morning. And I called a friend and actually went out walking while I spoke to a friend. And I engaged in what the Italians call passeggiare, which just means, wandering with no destination in mind. So, I just started walking, really didn't, there were several times where I didn't have any idea where I was in particular in the city. And then eventually, I sort of ended up somewhere familiar and started walking back towards home. Last night, by contrast, before I went to sleep, my trusty smartwatch gave me a notification that said, you've had a balanced day. Not an easy day, not a stressful day, but a balanced day. And then, I went to sleep last night, and my same trusty watch this morning rated my sleep very, very highly, in contrast to previous days. It wasn't terrible the previous days, but it was markedly improved. So, this idea that exercise is an adjuvant to sleep, I think is, a valuable one. Social connection seems to be an adjuvant to exercise. Exercise probably is not an adjuvant to, no, maybe it is. Maybe some light exercise is an adjuvant to diet, because we know, for example, that even if you just take a light walk after a meal, you tend to blunt the postprandial glucose spike.
But I would say it would go more strong the other direction. If you're eating better, you're more inclined. I find exercise easier, and same. I would say that sleep probably affects your eating behaviour more so than your eating behaviour affects your sleep. Now, these are huge generalisations, and I'm sure that people would take these concepts to task. But I like this idea where you're going. I think this whole idea of what might be the switch that you could flick that would have this domino effect and cascade to a whole range of different effects. Is there one ring to rule them all? In the Lord of the Rings kind of stuff.
And even if there's not a single ring, from a clinical perspective and a treatment perspective, perhaps it opens up the possibility of dialogues with patients about the pairings of things that are most likely to be particularly powerful. So that could be introduced into the clinical conversation. So for example, if it turns out that those micro moments of social connection do actually really act as an adjuvant for exercise, then that could turn into a clinical conversation around that and around supporting that person to identify ways that they can really harness that. Which could look like lots of things. It might look like, for example, not going to the gym alone, going with a friend, or it might look like exercising outdoors with a friend rather than alone. In order to boost that.
I like this. I keep coming that phrasing that you said earlier about multiple moments. Multiple micro moments of
micro moments. Yeah.
I really like that. Actually, I haven't heard that phrase used before. I really like that. But I agree with you, and I like the fact that you've talked about how a conversation about, because the truth be told, this is going to be different for different people. I think probably those pairings are different for different people, and what potentially is the one thing that might trigger, a cascade of positive benefits is going to be different for different people as well. But I think, and so I think that conversation piece is really, really valuable. But I think also maybe as a self-exploration exercise, it's probably a very valuable thing to do.
Absolutely, yeah. And as we've already seen from your example, in your particular case, multiple micro moments of social connection are completely wasted on you. because
Well, no.
because you've got some combination of internal I don't know, it's a combination of grit and striving and pushing yourself and wanting to win, wanting to beat that thing that was previously the record. That seems to do a lot of that work for you as an individual, but it's not necessarily going to do that work for other people.
No, and you know what? I'd even say that that might be the case for me in the context of exercise, but not necessarily other domains of my life. And because I can think, I love that quote by Mark Twain. Said, I can go for a couple of months on a good compliment, and that's been my experience. Like there are times, particularly like I run a social enterprise. And it's a challenging space, and I've had times where people have just given me a couple of words of encouragement, and it's amazing. I'm actually often staggered by how just a little encouragement can make a massive impact on people's whole demeanor and their motivation levels and the way that they approach life. I think back to my growing up, my mother is an incredible encourager. I think that was one of her. I'm so grateful to her. And my wife and I talk about this often. Mum would just. I don't even know if she believed it. I'm assuming she probably did, but she just would say, "You can do anything." Yeah, you. Did she say it? I remember saying to my brother and I, are you boys? Oh, you guys are, you're so clever, or are you so athletic, or whatever it might be. You just felt like you had a cheer squad, and I've been very intentional about that as, with my kids, that we all need a cheer squad. And I think that one of the most, powerful, the most wonderful things we can offer to other people is to be that cheer squad, be that encourager.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's my offer to you then. In the light of what we're talking about and the idea that there most likely is some adjuvant effect between various pairings of lifestyle medicine pillars. Next time you're having difficulty going off to sleep, give me a call. I'll come over and I'll sit by the bed saying, "Come on, Darren, you got this. Come on, Darren. Come on, Darren, you can do this. You can do this. You can go to sleep, Darren. Come on."
Let me reciprocate by saying that you're in the last throes of this PhD. So I just want to say, come on, Simon, you can do this. You can do it. You can do it. It's an exercise in perseverance towards the end, but you can do it. So go well, brother.
Lift is presented by Simon Matthews and Darren Morton. It's sponsored by the Lift Project and supported by Avondale University. Music provided by Pixabay. If you have a question or a topic you would like to hear more about, send us an email to podcast@theliftproject.global. The Lift Project. Lift your mood, lift your life.